The start of the NCAA season is right around the corner, and Jenn Hatfield is here to chat all about Ivy League Media Day and the top 3 teams in the preseason poll.
Ogunbowale for the win.
Good! You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Hello and happy Friday. You are locked on to women's basketball. I'm host Natalie Heavren, and I'm a features writer and the Atlantic 10 beat reporter for The Next. Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Women's Basketball is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. If this is your first time listening to Locked On Women's Basketball, welcome. We at The Next have over 100 reported pieces every single month. We have a beat reporter on every single WNBA team, one on 15 different NCAA beats, including the two of us. So get that YouTube subscription up, and you can also support us by subscribing to The Next, $9 a month, $72 a year, thenexthoops.com. Today, we'll be chatting all about Princeton, Columbia, and Harvard, who were picked as the top 3 teams in the Ivy preseason poll. Joining me today is Ivy League beat writer and managing editor at The Next, Jenn Hatfield. She also covers the Washington Mystics and writes about family rivalries as well. So starting off, we've talked about the success of Princeton a fair bit on this podcast last season. They were picked to win the conference again. Why was that?
There are a couple of reasons, and thanks for having me on. Always happy to talk Ivy League, and always happy to chat with you on the pod. So, Princeton, I think part of it is honestly they win every year lately. The last time they didn't win a share of the Ivy League title was back in 2016-17. So they've been doing it for a while. But beyond that, they return all of their major award winners. They return the reigning Player of the Year in Caitlin Chen, the reigning co-defensive player of the year in Ellie Mitchell, and the reigning rookie of the year in Madison St. Rose. So that's a pretty good big 3 to have. And I think that combined with their track record makes them a fairly easy choice for number 1 in the preseason, even with as good as the top of this league is.
And can you talk to me a little bit more about those key returners in Chen, Mitchell, and St. Rose?
Sure. Yeah. So Caitlin Chen is an electric guard. Really good at getting to the rim and really deadly in the mid-range as well. Head coach Carla Berube said at Media Day that she has also been working on her 3-point shot, which is kind of one of her few weaknesses on the offensive end. So if that's going down, I don't know what you're going to do there. So Chen is a senior. This is her last season at Princeton, though she'll have another year to use as a grad transfer outside the Ivy League. Ellie Mitchell has now won Defensive Player of the Year twice in a row. She is an undersized center, but also a complete defensive menace. Excellent rebounder, gets a million steals, is kind of the definition of that gritty glue player who dives on the floor, really the anchor of that defense in all ways. So she's back, and we'll see, any offense she adds is a bonus, but I would expect that to tick up a little bit as well. And then Madison St. Rose, the reigning Ivy Rookie of the Year, I think she could be poised for a breakout season. Berube was really happy with how she's played in the preseason. She's kind of a wing player who can sort of do a lot of everything, and I think we'll see her step up as a scorer more, with Princeton having graduated a 5-player senior class that was really kind of their heart and soul. So I think she's a great pick as someone who's really going to blossom this year, even as successful as she was last year in Ivy play. It took her a little bit as a freshman to kind of settle in and find her groove in the rotation, but once she did, she was really great for them.
And you mentioned a 5-person senior class leaving and some individual improvements for players, but what did Princeton want to work on or work to improve in the offseason?
Yeah, so one thing that they're looking at in the preseason and in their foreign tour over the summer is transition offense. They're always an elite defense, and that's another reason why some voters may have picked them first in the preseason poll, is that defense is just a nightmare for anybody. But despite that, they didn't get a ton of points in the fast break last season. You would think that with all the steals they're generating and stops, they would be able to run off that, and they didn't do that a whole lot. And this year they've got a really athletic freshman class, 6-player freshman class, and that's kind of opening up opportunities, and they just think that they can capitalize more off that defense that they have that they're still working on. Berube is the coach who's never going to be happy with the defense in the preseason, but I think it's a safe bet that it's going to be good again, particularly with Mitchell back. And I think it makes sense for them to try to get out and run when they can. And it sounds like they're very excited about the added athleticism they have. And particularly when you think about Chen too, she's a player who can be tremendously creative in the open court. So that's definitely one thing to watch that may look a little bit different than in seasons past in a good way.
And you mentioned Princeton's foreign tour. Where did they go, and how did it help them on and off the court?
Yeah, so they went to Spain and Greece. All the FOMO there. It sounds like an amazing trip. I've covered foreign tours a fair amount for the Next, and those trips are never primarily about the basketball, right? They're about the off-court bonding experiences, the cultural experiences that they have first and foremost, and the basketball is kind of a bonus. But for Ivy League teams, the basketball piece is arguably bigger because Ivy League teams don't get to practice in the summer like other college teams do. So unless you're going on a foreign tour, in which case you get 10 practices before you leave. And then you get, of course, your exhibition games on the foreign tour. So that really, kind of puts Princeton ahead of other teams that didn't go on a foreign tour this year, because they did have, for once, these summer practices. So they got to try things out. They got to mix in players who haven't seen a lot of time before in their college careers or last season, and really just kind of experiment. So it was a really great trip, from what I've heard from Berube and from Chet Nweke, who is a senior who's averaged about 11 minutes per game and figures to take on a bigger role this year. So I think it was a great timing for them to kind of figure out what they have without that great senior class.
And, is there anyone, with 5 seniors leaving, is there anyone that's poised for a breakout season?
Yeah, I think St. Rose and Nweke are the two that I would pinpoint. St. Rose, we're kind of banking on that sophomore jump that you see a lot of freshmen make when they go from freshmen to sophomores. Berube said she's really taken on a leadership role, even though she is only a sophomore now. She's helping this big freshman class kind of get their feet wet. And she's also an example to that freshman class of look, if you keep working and you keep figuring this out, you can have as big of a role as a first year as St. Rose did last year. So I think she's going to be huge. She's improved on the court as well. So I'm excited to see what she's able to do. And then I think Nweke will play a big role. I can't tell you if she'll start or not, but I think she'll certainly contribute for them. And I'm excited for her to kind of get more of a shot in her senior season and see what she can do. So excited for both of those two.
And what are some storylines you're watching for the Tigers this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing is just their really intense non-conference schedule, which I know we'll talk about in a bit, so I won't totally spoil that. But I think that's going to be a big one. I think obviously when you have a team that's been as dominant in the conference as Princeton has been, can they win another title is always going to be a storyline, right? But I think what is Caitlin Chen going to do next is going to be a big story. I think that, and then I think going back to the transition piece, I think, if they can be really effective in the transition, then that gets scary because they're efficient defensively, they're efficient in the half court. Now, if they can add transition, that's just, one more way they can wear you out and really put up points in a hurry. So definitely excited to see that.
And yes, I of course want to talk about some key non-conference matchups that our listeners and, I should put on my calendar or their calendar.
Yeah, so Princeton is playing 6 Power 6 teams in the non-conference, which is tied for Columbia for the most in the league. I won't name all of them because that will take this entire podcast, but I will point out Their first one is at UCLA in mid-November. That's a homecoming game for Jenn, which is really exciting, and also is just going to be a great game. So really looking forward to that. And then the next week over Thanksgiving, they are in a tournament in Florida that I will be at. That is very exciting. They're going to play Oklahoma and Indiana, so not too shabby there either. I'm guessing you'll probably need a Flow Hoops subscription for that because it is a Thanksgiving tournament, unfortunately. But those are going to be really great tests for Princeton. Or a rematch from a couple years ago in the NCAA tournament when they lost to Indiana. So,
or they could just read your coverage if they don't want to pay for Flow Hoops.
There you go.
Coming up next, we'll discuss the WNIT runner-up Columbia Lions. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's not just almost the start of the NCAA season, but also well into the swing of the NFL season. So snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. With tons of action coming up on Sunday, I know I'm looking at some of the weekly specials, including highest and lowest scoring for both a team and a game. You can also build parlays, bet on the correct score of Thursday, Sunday, and Monday Night Football, bet on season awards, and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day, everydayers. Thank you for tuning in once again, and make sure you come back tomorrow for another installment of the WNBA Retrospect Series. So, Jen, last year the Columbia Lions were the first team out in the field of 68, but they were the runners-up in the WNIT. Since last season, who do the Lions return, and who were their key losses?
Yeah, so to sum this up briefly, they lost 7 seniors who were responsible for a little over half of their minutes and points last season. So they lose a lot. It is hard to overstate that. 2 of their players, Caitlin Davis and Jada Patrick, are now grad transfers at Power 5 schools, USC and Miami, respectively. So that is very cool. I'll be watching those teams and seeing how they do. But the good news for Columbia fans is they are returning possibly the best player in program history in Abby Shue, who is a senior guard and is 2 3-pointers away from the Ivy League career record with a season to play. So very good in a nutshell. They also returned junior point guard Kitty Henderson, who Caitlin Davis last year called a leader on the team and the heart and soul of the team, even though she was a sophomore surrounded by mostly seniors. So far, so good, to have your point guard and your shooting guard back as upperclassmen. They've also got, some supporting cast players around that I think are going to be really important. They get Paige Lauder back, who will give them kind of an inside presence and can also stretch the court as a good 3-point shooter. Perry Page is a sophomore wing who was just cleared after a knee injury in February. So that is great to have her there. She kind of emerged late in the season last year before her injury as, kind of an energy player, good defender off the bench at times. And then the other piece that's really important that folks may have forgotten about is Noah Komisania, who's a junior forward now, missed her entire sophomore season after having hip surgery that was unrelated to basketball. But she was really good as a freshman, particularly on the defensive end. She's from Spain. She started about half their games as a true freshman and, gave them some shot blocking and some size. So excited to see how she, fits back in. She's been participating daily in practice and seems to be good to go. So excited to see kind of like that core, players be able to step up from there. But that group's played together for a while. And I think that'll be a good base to put all these newcomers on top of.
And before I get into some other questions, Abby Shue played with USA Basketball over the summer. How do you think that will help her this season, possibly be even better than we've seen her in the past?
Yeah, I think it's huge for Abby. not so much because she, like added some skill to her game that she didn't have before. She's always been a really well-rounded player. Like I said, a fabulous shooter. But I think more from an intangibles perspective, she's super humble. And I think making that team and kind of showing that she belongs on that stage with all these Power 5 players that she said, in her eyes were kind of famous. I think that just gives her the confidence that I really am this good, which is something that head coach Megan Griffith, says to her all the time. But I think that just kind of gives her the, can walk around a little more like she owns the place. She'll never walk around like she owns the place, but she can have a little more of that swagger, knowing that she's, been on the biggest stage representing her country. And she said she tried to soak up that entire experience and just bring it back. So there should be a little trickle down effect to her teammates as well. And
what do the Lions need to do to continue the recent success that they've had as a program?
Yeah, I think, sustaining their culture is going to be a big one. That senior class that they graduated kind of built that. And I think they have the returners to be able to do that. So then it's just kind of integrating these newcomers. They have 2 transfers, which is pretty rare in the Ivy League. But 2 transfers giving you some experience, if not experience with the program, some college basketball experience. So that's big. And then 6 freshmen, including one who averaged 40 points a game as I think a junior in high school. So that seems promising. So they just need to figure out how all of the pieces fit together, right, and develop that chemistry. And but I think they have enough pieces to be high powered again. It's just a matter of how similar or different does it look to last year? Who is going to kind of fill out the starting lineup? Those are really exciting questions that I'm looking forward to seeing the answer to, but I don't know them quite as well as maybe I do for other teams, just because of all these new pieces that have to come in and find their place.
If you had to, make an informed guess, is anyone poised for a breakout season? Maybe one of the newcomers?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it a breakout season because she was really good last year, but Cecilia Collins, the junior transfer from Bucknell, seems to be a really important piece, could start for them, I think. Megan Griffith was talking about on Media Day how she and the other transfer, Maryland transfer, Ava Ciola, who's a sophomore, both of them have been playing 1 through 4 so far in the preseason, which is pretty impressive considering they just got here. You're giving them 4 positions and they just got here. So that kind of speaks to their basketball IQ and versatility. And like I said, Collins was a really elite player at Bucknell, and they will surely miss her this season. And I think she could kind of slide in pretty seamlessly at Columbia, on the perimeter as well.
And you mentioned seeing how all the pieces fit in together. What are some of the storylines you're watching for the Lions this year, aside from that?
Yeah, I think Abby Shu's chase up the record books is definitely one that I will be watching. I mentioned the whopping 2 3-pointers she needs to set the Ivy career record. I'm guessing we'll get that on night 1. No pressure, Abby. But she's also within striking range of Columbia's career record for points scored across men's and women's basketball, which is currently held by the legendary Camille Zimmerman. So she could get that toward the end of the year, which is definitely something I'll be watching, and just curious to see, what she does. I don't know how you one up her honorable mention All-America season that she had last year, but I'm sure excited to see it. I'm really excited. You mentioned I cover families. We do have a family situation here at Columbia. Kitty Henderson's younger sister, Fliss, is a freshman, and I am very excited for the Henderson show. And kind of like I said, I think the newness itself is a story that I'll be following. So lots to look forward to here.
And of course, what are some key non-conference matchups that I should be adding to my calendar right after we finish recording?
Yeah, so like I mentioned with Princeton, Columbia also has 6 Power 6 teams on its schedule. It gets Seton Hall pretty much right off the bat on November 10th, which is starting to be a little rivalry between those two. They seem to match up in high leverage situations, and there's a Cornell grad transfer on that roster, so that adds a little Ivy intrigue. Then a whopping 4 days later, they play Duke and Yale grad transfer Camilla Emsbo. So I see what you did here, Megan, with your scheduling. So that is going to be a really fun game that I am going to be sad not to be at in person. And then they go to the Bahamas and they get Georgia and Florida on a neutral, which is going to be really exciting and probably also Flo Hoops Payweld. Sorry.
Thanks so much. And coming up next, we'll talk about what Jenn has seen at Media Day from Harvard, as well as what she thinks we should expect from the Crimson. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. With all the uncertainty in the world today, it's important to be prepared. And in a year of so many natural disasters that can lead to supply chain shortages for medications or the inability to get medications in a timely manner, it's made me realize how important it is to have crucial medications on hand. That's also why Jase Medical made the Jase case. It's a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. You can also customize your case and add additional life-saving medications based on your unique needs. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. Jase is continually working to expand their medication offerings, and if you're not sure what medication your friends and family may need, but want to help them be prepared, you can buy a gift card so they can get a Jase case of their own. Jase handles everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Go to Jase Medical and enter code LOCKEDON at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That's promo code LOCKEDON at jasemedical.com. So here we are again talking about Harvard. Last year, they went all the way to the Ivy League championship game in Carrie Moore's first season. How did they prepare to build on that success, and what returners do they have coming back?
Yeah, so of the top 3 in the preseason poll, Harvard has the highest share of minutes and points returning at about 3/4 back. So that's a really good foundation that they have. They have a big 3 that, with absolutely zero respect to the big 3s at Princeton and Columbia, Harvard's could be the best in the league. And I know that's a hot take when I just talked about how Princeton's returns all the major award winners. But Harvard's big 3 is really good. They've got Harmony Turner, who's a first-team All-Ivy performer and just an electric combo guard. You've got Lola Mullaney, who is one of the top 3-point shooters in the league, on par with Abby Shue, arguably. And then you have Elena Rodriguez, who's a 6'2". She's listed as a guard. She played the 5 at times last season. She'll float more on the perimeter. So let's call her a do-everything guard forward. Elena Rodriguez played with the Spanish national team, the U20s, in the European Championships this summer. So continuing the theme of international experience, helping to make players better. And that's just a group that's tremendously versatile, can pass, shoot, score, really beautiful to watch on the offensive end. And they'll kind of lead the charge for this Harvard team that has some new faces, but has more depth as a whole than they did last season, and does have a fair amount back. So excited to watch that group.
And, you touched on this a little bit, but who did Harvard lose in the off season, and how does that balance between what they've lost and what they've returned, contribute to, does them being picked at 3rd feel a little bit low to you with all that in mind?
Yeah, I do think the 3rd place feels a little bit low to me. Now, Columbia and Harvard were separated by a point in the poll, so they're basically tied for 2nd. So I'm not shouting from the rooftops that I'm upset about it, but 3rd does feel a little bit low to me. Just what I was talking about with the share of minutes and points returning being much higher than Columbia and also higher than Princeton. The big losses for Harvard were guards Mackenzie Forbes and Maggie McCarthy. Maggie McCarthy was more your true point. And Mackenzie Forbes, at 6 feet tall, pretty sure played 1 through 5 in her Harvard career at times. And she's now a grad transfer at USC. If you see a pattern, yep, we've got 3 Ivy grad transfers out at USC. So that's the Pac-12 program that Ivy League fans will want to watch, especially with the Brown alumna Lindsay Gottlieb at the helm. So those 2 are going to be really hard to replace. Them stepping up and playing their best basketball at the end of the season is what Carrie Moore credited for Harvard getting so hot at the end of the season. Not only their run through the Ivy League tournament, upsetting Columbia and then almost toppling Princeton, but also their run to the WNIT quarterfinals before they lost to Columbia in what was a thrilling game. So, those two, it may not be a giant share of points that they lost off the board, but they'll definitely have to replace kind of that leadership. They'll have to replace that Mackenzie Forbes do everything energy. And they'll just need players to kind of step up and plug holes, and for the current seniors to kind of find that, some coaches call it like playing like a senior vibe, seniors, the best seniors tend to reach an extra gear in their final year, and we'll need to see that to help replace the loss of that class as well.
And is anyone poised for a breakout season?
So Elena Rodriguez had her breakout season last year, but I still think she's going to have another breakout season, if that makes sense. I think she's going to take another leap, with Carrie Moore saying she's going to get more time kind of roaming the perimeter instead of being more strictly an interior player. She's just so versatile, and I'm really excited to see how she kind of seizes this expanded role now that the Crimson do have more post depth to be able to move Rodriguez, not just from playing the 5, but now she can play the 4, and which is, kind of much more of a perimeter position in Carrie Moore's offense. So I'm really excited to see that. But if I'm breaking the rules, I can nominate a first year who looks really good. A first year who looks really good so far from what we hear is Carly White, who's a guard. She can run the point and push Turner off the ball, or she can, play the 2 guard and let Turner run point. Either way, they can kind of trade off. And the upperclassmen have talked glowingly at Media Day about kind of White's fearlessness and demeanor on the court. And I think she's poised to contribute right away. Carrie Moore talked about how this whole 3-player freshman class plus a 4th newcomer in a junior transfer, she was looking for players in the recruiting process who could contribute right away, because Harvard didn't have a ton of depth last year, especially when they would get in foul trouble. So I would expect minutes for White pretty quickly, if not immediately. And so excited to see, how that transition to college goes. It's different for every freshman, but I think she could make a big impact and potentially unlock Turner too, if she can take some of that load off a little bit.
And, I have to ask as well, what are some storylines you're watching for the Crimson this year?
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit with the post depth. I'm excited to see what that looks like and how that changes Harvard's offense. They've been a team that's been undersized for a couple years, but they've got several players who can battle in the post more and give them more size, so that when they go up against bigger teams, it's a little bit easier. And also, like I said, giving Rodriguez room to roam. So I'm excited about how those post players do, especially Katie Krupa, who's a sophomore, 6'1". She got some minutes last year as a freshman. I think she'll get more this year, especially if they want to start Rodriguez at the 4. Krupa could slide in at the 5. I'm not sure which position Carrie Moore wants to start Rodriguez at yet. Maybe she doesn't even know, but that'll be fun to see. I think defense is going to be a big storyline. Carrie Moore's in her 2nd season now. In the season before Moore got to Harvard was really good offensively, but struggled defensively. And last year they made some strides on the defensive end while playing great offense still. And I think this season I'm excited to see what they do further on that end. Moore talked about at Media Day how important it is for them to be able to be, kind of like Princeton. Like when Princeton needs a stop, by and large, Princeton gets a stop. And Harvard wants to be a team like that too, that is confident that when it needs a stop, it will get it.
And, got my calendar out. What are the last couple of non-conference matchups that I should be putting on my calendar?
Yeah, so the opening night game to watch out of the Ivy League, one that I will be at and I'm super excited about, Harvard is traveling to Maryland to take on the Terrapins. So I think that is going to be phenomenally fun. And then Harvard also has 2 other marquee Power 6 games. They're playing at Baylor, which is a homecoming for Turner. We love a good homecoming against a really talented team. And then they also host Michigan in early December, which is super fun because Carrie Moore came to Harvard from being an assistant at Michigan. So just love that little storyline. And I think it's really awesome that Harvard's able to get a Power 6 team, a really good team, to come to Levites Pavilion where they play their home games. So excited for those two as well. And they have a total of 4 Power 6 games on their schedule, which is third most in the conference.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Jen. I feel like I've got my November and December TV schedules partially mapped out. But where can the people find you and your work writing up all this fun Ivy League coverage and your Ivy League preview that's to come?
Yeah, so go to thenexthoops.com for all the coverage. You'll also see me tweeting at Jenn Hatfield 1. That is Jen with 2 N's. And then hopefully, some more on Locked On Women's Basketball. But yeah, stay tuned for my season preview soon at the Next Hoops on all 8 teams in the Ivy League, not just the 3 we discussed today.
Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day, everydayers. As you know, I'm here for you every other Friday and every Saturday. Make sure to tune in to M, Hunter, and Lincoln. They've lately been working on a great retrospective series, looking at old game film, news reports, stats, and more to determine the best WNBA prospect. And tomorrow, they'll be talking about Breanna Stewart.